So I am here. My name is Matthew. I'm alongside
Abe Brath, aka Seco VGC.
Abe. You're looking pretty fine today, man. I gotta admit, I like the hair down. It's looking nice, dude. So we have a really interesting match for us in the top 8, and I know that Sam is from Canada, and I know that's your friend. So can you tell us a little bit about your Canadian friend first?
Actually, Sam and Martin are both from the local region.
Oh, nice.
So we're having a Canadian showdown. We really wanted to do this match because all the Canadians got placed in the same side of the bracket for top cut.
Man.
So it's going to be impossible to have Canada finals. But at least if we give you this, you guys are guaranteed to see a Canadian match. We're going to represent Canada just a little bit here at Toronto Regionals.
As it should be, absolutely. I'm
For
very
sure.
happy for you. I'm happy for the players. There's nothing better than placing well in your own area, you know?
Yeah.
So at least one of them we know will be advancing to the top 4. Maybe they'll be lucky enough to make it to the finals.
So let's talk a bit about the players. Sam he recently graduated from seniors to masters. Really strong seniors player when he was around, and now he's in masters. I often see him at PCs. He sometimes runs a little bit unconventional stuff, so we'll have to look at what he's running today. I'm not totally sure. It looks a little bit unconventional. We see a Nihilego and a Marowak Alola, two Pokemon that we haven't seen too much of in the recent format.
I find that Alolan Marowak is very difficult to use since it's a slow Pokemon, and there are many Pokemon that can check it. However, it does a very specific job, and it easily counters Tapu Koko, Arcanine, two very popular Pokemon in the format.
For sure. Just looking at Sam's team here, he has a Celesteela and a Gyarados. That Marowak Alola is incredibly important to redirect those electric attacks away from Celesteela and Gyarados because they hate taking electric type attacks.
When you're using Marowak yourself, how do you properly use him so that he can stay around to actually absorb those electric attacks? Do you bring him in the back, or do you lead with them, or what's the strategy?
I tend to find that Alolan Marowak works best under Trick Room. That's how most people traditionally run it, just because it's so slow, and with that Thick Club, you can really start to get a lot of damage output. Thick Club is an exclusive item to Marowak. It doubles its attack, so that just makes it very, very strong. And with that new Ghost Fire type, it has a really unique niche in the metagame. It can redirect electric attacks. It's one of the best ghost types, in my opinion.
I agree.
But that fire type is sort of holding it back because it's so outclassed by Arcanine in most situations. Looking at Martin's team, on the other hand, we have Tapu Koko, Celesteela, Garchomp, Ninetales, Snorlax, and Arcanine. A bit more of a standard team that we've come to see in the format.
Absolutely. As I started progressing through the format and learning myself, this is the kind of team that I had tested into. When, even though it's very potent, very powerful, congratulations, Martin, on making the top 8. How can I word this? It's more safe than, let's say, Sam playing something like Nihilego or Alolan Marowak. They're a little bit more straightforward. I really like the addition of Ninetales into Martin's team. We had seen yesterday that Trista, who also had made top 8, she chose to run Vanillux over Ninetales. Can you tell me why someone would want to run Ninetales on their team?
Ninetales offers a lot of great weather control. It can fire off 100% blizzards, which are always nice, always have a chance to freeze, and it doesn't look like Sam has a way to reset that weather, so Martin is fully safe to do that. Ninetales also gets access to Aurora Veil, a move that's really good. It acts sort of like Light Screen and Reflect at the same time. It boosts your special defense and your defense for 5 turns. The catch is it can only be used in Hail. Good thing Ninetales brings the Hail with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you had mentioned, Sam doesn't seem to have a way to change the weather, at least not easily if he does. So when you notice that as a Ninetales player, are you familiar with that? That's one Pokemon I've yet to test. Would you instantly bring it if you notice it's the only weather?
Not necessarily. I tend to find that Ninetales is good in specific matchups. I won't say it's a perfect Pokemon. In fact, a lot of times I find its damage underwhelming, and it's incredibly frail.
Yes.
So if you're running Ninetales, you have to have a specific goal in mind. You have to want to bring it for a specific Pokemon. You're either bringing it for Garchomp, maybe a Gyarados if you have Freeze Dry being 4 times effective against Gyaradoses. But it facing down some other threats, it just doesn't feel like it's doing enough damage. It just doesn't feel like it's pushing itself far enough, which is why I am a little more partial to Vanillux myself.
Okay, very nice. I'm glad you had said that.
But Ninetales can be used very effectively given the opportunity.
When Trista was doing her interview, she pretty much said exactly what you said, so you and her are on the same page on that one, absolutely. Martin chose to run Tapu Koko, and so did Sam, and I believe, according to our notes, there were 6 Tapu Kokos in the top 8. Are you willing to say that Tapu Koko is the best overall Tapu?
Yeah, for sure. It's great damage output, great ability, great momentum gainer. It can Volt Switch out to whatever it wants. It can Thunderbolt for big damage. It can Dazzling Gleam to get spread. It can, some sets use Nature's Madness to instantly chunk a lot of bulky Pokemon. Mm-hmm. It's so versatile. It can run a plethora of sets. It is just so fast. You know, we've seen a lot of these powerful Ultra Beasts come in. Stuff like Nihilego and Garchomp, I guess. They're both very fast Pokemon.
Absolutely.
And to have something that's even faster, even one step above that, just to be able to get off lots of good, consistent damage while being so fast is just an incredible thing to have.
I agree.
I don't see Tapu Koko dropping off in usage anytime soon.
I agree with that statement as well. To speak about Trista again, since that was one of the matches that I had watched, her Tapu Koko was going up against an opponent's Tapu Koko. However, hers was faster. And like you had said, the speed is really important. So after you get a little bit of chip damage on your opponent's Pokemon, to be able to outspeed and attack first is very important to be able to win a match.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like Tapu Koko is great at starting games, and it's great at closing games too. It offers consistent damage to chip, but it can also come in and do lots of big damage just to get those final knockouts, right? So it's really good at what it does. I don't see it dropping off anytime soon. And Tapu Koko has a goal, right? It's always going to be able to hit that chip. It's always going to be able to hit that big damage. So it's just so good at those things that I could never see it dropping off.
Right, I agree completely. And of course, just because it's the most used Tapu doesn't mean that you can't use the other ones. We had just seen Nick win Roanoke with Tapu Bulu, which is very difficult to do. So congratulations again, Nick. So yeah, you can use any Tapu that fits your playstyle, but overall I agree. And as someone like myself who's learning the format, Tapu Koko is that consistent threat that you had said. It's very easy to continue to do its job.
One thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier was, Tapu Koko is able to come in and sweep, or it's able to do that chip damage. And something I wanted to talk about yesterday, but I didn't get to, is goal-based team building. We were talking earlier
about when we first met each other.
About how when you build a VGC team, a lot of times when you're new, people will say, oh, just use good stuffs. Use the good Pokemon in the format, right? And good stuff is great, right? You pick 6 Pokemon, they do well together, they mesh. But something that I feel like a lot of people don't recognize that when they're starting is teams sometimes require a goal to be successful. They need a goal. To bring us back to 2014 for a second, I know it was a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, please.
I remember watching Alex Aglaza win the 2014 National Championships. And when he talked about his team afterwards, he said he had a very specific goal in mind, how he wanted the game to pan out every single time. He wanted to get lots of damage off in the first couple of turns with chip, so that he could have priority Talonflame Brave Bird come in and clean up the rest of his opponent's Pokemon. And there wasn't much they could do, because at the end of the game, Talonflame was putting on so much pressure. In this format, we've seen a lot of good stuff. We talked about Fake PG, coming up a lot. We've talked about, AFK, these cores of good, solid Pokemon, but they don't have a goal in mind. especially for newer players who aren't as familiar playing with them. I think that one thing that a lot of players can do to up their game is try and figure out a goal. What do you want to do with your team? What should you constantly be striving for each game? And if it deviates from that path, how do you get yourself back into a position to accomplish that goal?
I agree completely. I do think that you need to have a well thought out plan for victory. Now, like you said, there's nothing wrong with learning the format with good stuffs. However, when you want to take it to that next level, you have to think a little bit outside the box and have a goal. What do you think Sam or Martin's goal is to win this match?
Honestly, looking at both these teams, I see Martin running good stuff, so I am not totally sure what his goal is. His goal in this case might be to, as I said, good stuff is great.
Right.
And with Tapu Koko, you can sort of use that as a goal in my mind.
Yes, you can. And it's crazy how Tapu Koko can switch roles in the middle of a match almost.
It can get that chip damage, it can get that big damage. And then the other big goal I think for good stuffs that a lot more people are familiar with is if you're using Celesteela, you can always use that as a win condition. If the opponent cannot deal with Celesteela, if they cannot KO it, you're just going to be able to wall them out. Just wall them out, and there's nothing they can do.
Absolutely. Right? We see that Martin has Arcanine for Sam's Celesteela, and Sam has Marowak for Martin's Celesteela.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, how they can maneuver around that Ultra Beast, because like you had said, Celesteela can also be kind of a goal as well. If you neutralize the threats that are a problem for Celesteela, then, she can really hold her own against 2, maybe even 3 Pokemon.
Oh, yeah, for sure. In Sam's case, though, I think he might have a bit of an upper hand here against the opposing Celesteela. In Martin's case, he has the Tapu Koko and the Arcanine to deal with Celesteela. But Sam has Marowak, so it can really neutralize that Tapu Koko threat, which means that Martin's going to have to rely on that Arcanine to KO Sam's Celesteela. And Sam has a plethora of ways to deal with Arcanine. He has Nihilego, he has Tapu Koko, which can deal with lots of good consistent damage. He has that Gyarados, which can really just plow through Arcanines. So it's really going to be interesting to see how Martin's able to ensure that Sam isn't able to set up his win conditions with Celesteela. Same set up that win condition with Gyarados if it maybe decides to Dragon Dance or something.
Right, that is a goal in itself to set up a Dragon Dance with Gyarados. That's actually a pathway to victory for sure.
Or maybe even if that Machamp is able to... I think yesterday we saw it didn't have Dynamic Punch, but I'm not totally sure about that. We saw Cross Chop?
Yeah, we saw Cross Chop into the Gastrodon quite a few times, and I believe we've seen a Bullet Punch into a Finny. And I think those are the only 2 moves that we had possibly seen off of the Machamp.
I had heard that some of the players speculating around the venue that it was Scope Lens. I'm not totally sure about that. I've been excited to see it because I've only heard hearsay.
Right, exactly. I'm very excited to actually just see a Machamp make the top 8. Now,
Hey man, Machamp is a world champion. It won back in 2015 Dynamic Punch. Mark McCullen, Woopa King, won it in seniors.
Yes, sir.
That Machamp has been going strong since then.
Excuse me, let me not disrespect Machamp, the world champion. However, it is quite exciting, though, to see it in this format. Now, Sam, to me anyway, it looks like he's using a little bit more unconventional Pokemon as opposed to Martin, who is using all Pokemon that have already proven themselves. If you take the approach of Sam to go into a tournament, how do you maneuver through the field and even make it to a top cut with Pokemon like that on your team? Do you have to be one step ahead of the metagame, or what's the thought process there?
You know what? For me personally, use what's comfortable. If you are comfortable using that awkward stuff, if you're not awkward, but unconventional stuff is more what I should say. If you're comfortable using that unconventional stuff, use it. We talked to Ashton yesterday. Ashton Cox, very well known for his unconventional picks. He says use them if you're comfortable with it. He's comfortable with it, he should use it. If you think it's going to beat the metagame, if you think that you can beat the metagame with your weird picks, if you think you can beat the metagame with your something that's non-standard, go for it. It's a little bit more difficult because it's not as well established. Using something like Nihilego or using something like I want to say like Turtonator, which is something completely out there. We don't have a Turtonator in Top Cut, but
darn, man.
I know.
I like that turtle.
I guess even Machamp, right? Using something unconventional can be tricky. There's no one's going to argue that. But it does give you a bit of a surprise factor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people don't know necessarily what you're going to do with that unexpected Pokemon. A lot of people aren't totally sure what's going to happen when you show up. I remember Ashton using Heliolisk. No one knew what Heliolisk did back in 2014. And I'm sure for Sam, we have a slight idea of what his Machamp's going to do. But then we saw Cross Chop and possibly Scope Lens. That's huge, right? Like that's really unexpected, right?
Yeah.
So you do have that surprise factor that you can really play into.
For anyone out there that is wanting to build an unconventional team like this, and you said the most important thing is to make sure that you actually think it can win, that is important, but also to be comfortable with it. How do you become comfortable with unconventional things? Is it just through practice and playtesting?
Practice and playtesting, always. You just gotta practice and hope for the best. Sometimes you try and innovate something, and I truly do love people who use unconventional teams. They're the ones trying to push the metagame just a little bit further. They're the ones who are innovating, and just all that testing that really goes into an unconventional team is incredibly good for the metagame, I think. I definitely think you just need a ton of testing with it. You just need to practice, because otherwise, you got to know those matchups perfectly.
Absolutely. And regardless of the item that Machamp may or may not have, we do know that the move itself, Cross Chop, does have a high critical hit ratio. So that can come into play in this format because we know how powerful Intimidate is. If I'm correct, I do believe that a critical hit will bypass stat drops or boost. Is that correct?
So we saw him yesterday on stream, Nick Nevers, a very good player, probably the top player in North America, actually. What am I saying?
Very great player.
Good player. He's a great player.
Absolutely.
Him and Rajan Blaramons, they innovated a really interesting Kartana set just a couple of regionals back. They call it Critana. It's Kartana carrying Scope Lens. Yeah, exactly. The Kartana carrying the Scope Lens and Leaf Blade. One of the most important things for them was if they got intimidated by an Arcanine, they could Leaf Blade and still have a 50% chance of getting the critical hit, which means that there's a 50% chance that Intimidate drop does nothing. Arcanine was one of the best counters to Kartana, had a 50% chance of neutralizing it. That's a really good, if you're playing the odds game, that's a really good thing in your favor, right? As a Kartana player. So I definitely think that the Scope Lens and critical hit rate is a very interesting combination, and those critical hits can really do a lot of damage. Personally, I do have to tell a little bit of a sob story.
Have at it, my friend.
I went to 2014 Nats. It's my first major event, and I played Hayden McTavish's father. I'm sorry, I do not remember his first name, but Hayden McTavish's father was playing Kingdra. Sniper Kingdra with Scope Lens and Focus Energy. And I don't know if you know, but when Kingdra uses Focus Energy and carries Scope Lens, it guarantees critical hits. It could be the opposite ability. There's a couple of abilities for Kingdra. I believe it's Sniper, though, is the one that
yeah, and Sniper would, real quick, that makes critical hits do even more damage. Isn't that correct?
I believe. It's been a while since I looked at that set, but...
Right. Yeah, it's definitely been a couple of years.
put something to sleep on turn 1. He focus energied on turn 1. He then proceeded to critical hit Draco Meteor every single one of my Pokemon, and I was eliminated from the tournament.
Oh my. That is one heck of a strategy, considering that Draco Meteor would lower your own stat drops, but the critical hit will bypass through.
Exactly.
Wow.
Critical hit bypasses all stat increases and stat drops, so it was incredibly important that he had that focus energy to get that critical hit rate. I was so disappointed. I didn't know the mechanic at the time. I didn't realize that critical hits were 100% effective. I was still very new to the game.
Yeah,
but I do have to really give shout-outs to him because that was a really, really incredible matchup we had, and really showed me that, you know, these innovative teams, these unpredictable teams really can come as a surprise to a lot of players, and they really can muscle past some of the more conventional things.
Way earlier in round 1, when we had seen the Eevee team go up against a Tapu Bulu that had Roar.
Yeah.
So, you know, to talk about how you were saying that you just weren't familiar with what the Kingdra could actually do, that is one benefit that unconventional teams will have, is that your opponent, no matter how amazing of a player and a trainer that they are, they cannot prepare for what they don't know is there.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So it's definitely an interesting choice, and I hope that Sam does choose to bring Machamp in this final set. I wonder how long until the round gets started.
One thing I wanted to point out, you were just talking about unconventional sets, things that people don't prepare for. I've actually found, or just from my experience and looking at the some of the top cut teams that occurred, some really unconventional things that you expect to be standard, but then turn out to be unconventional, have done very well at events. I remember in 2014, Ray Rizzo came to 2014 Nationals with speedy Aegislash. Everyone had been running defensive, and he came in with the fastest Aegislash anyone had seen. And he did incredibly well with it. Unfortunately, he didn't make it to, I can't remember if he top cut or not. We've had a couple of those. In 2016, Wolf Glick came in with that really unconventional Raichu and Mega Rayquaza / Kyogre that seemed play, but it was a little bit more unconventional, right? So if you're able to use that unconventionalness, use that unpredictability to your advantage, by all means go for it. By all means.
Absolutely. To talk again about their team a little bit, we had said that there is going to be a Celesteela War if they choose those 2 Pokemon. However, you said Sam may have the advantage there because of the Alola Marowak able to redirect Coco's attacks. Now, if Arcanine is Martin's best chance to KO Sam's Celesteela, we do see that, as you said, Sam has quite a few ways to deal with Arcanine. Nihiligo has a power gem to go into the Arcanine that's super effective. And you said that Gyarados can also take a chunk out of that Arcanine too. So if you're Martin, how do you protect that Arcanine? How do you even go about trying to keep that thing alive to get the matchup that you want?
Well, something else that I think it's going to come down to, I know we talked about Arcanine a little earlier, and Arcanine is definitely going to be a big factor in this match, I believe. We'll have to see how it actually plays out, but for me, I'd be looking at, I need to ensure that Celesteela doesn't wall me out if I'm Martin. The other question is, if we do get down to Celesteela, some Celesteela carry Flamethrower. In fact, I believe it's more standard now than the original substitute that a lot of them were running. Mm-hmm. If it has to come down to that, if one trainer is running Flamethrower and the other isn't, we could see a very different matchup in how it's played, especially because of how bulky Celesteela is here. Just how much it seems like Sam is trying to protect that Celesteela and Gyarados with Alola Marowak.
I know that Sam and Martin, you had said they're both local players. Do you happen to know if they know each other? Have they
they do. They do know each other. They played each other a number of times.
Oh, so they are even familiar with themselves. Because when you become more familiar with your opponent, that's when you can start making those like next level reads, like on a whole nother stratosphere.
For sure. Hopefully we're going to see some really good Pokemon. One thing that I do know is because these players know each other's personalities, I'm hoping that no one tilts the other player and maybe plays some mind games with them. We might see a little bit of that.
I like it.
Something else I wanted to point out is Sam's running Tapu Koko and Alola Marowak. And we touched on possibly Sam having the better matchup for his Tapu Koko. But looking at Tapu Koko and Alola Marowak, one of the first things that does come to mind is Sam might be running Discharge on his Tapu Koko. Discharge is the electric spread move, meaning that it's going to be very difficult for Martin to stop that Tapu Koko from hitting his Celesteela, or from getting off lots of big damage on both his opposing Pokemon. And one of the biggest kickers about Discharge is I believe it has a 30% paralysis chance.
Yes,
and that can really turn the tides of battle here. It doesn't look like either of them have Tapu Fini to prevent any sort of paralysis hacks.
Yes, Misty Terrain is very powerful to stop those status moves. And like you said, Discharge can really come in clutch, even sometimes getting a double paralysis against your opponent's Pokemon.
For sure. In my mind, Martin might have to fight a little harder in this matchup, but at the same time, due to Sam's unconventional choices, excuse me, they are unconventional for a reason. It's because the standard is the standard because it's usually what's the best for the Pokemon, right? It's how the metagame's evolved, how that Pokemon best fits into the game. And so even though we talk about how unpredictable and surprising they can be, at the same time, maybe they don't necessarily perform at the same high level of those optimized other Pokemon, right?
Right. I think that the Nihilego going up against the Garchomp of Martin is very interesting. I've only briefly tested Nihilego, so I don't have much experience. I am hoping that maybe you have had some testing, because what I want to ask is, even though Nihilego oftentimes carries a move to deal with the Garchomp, usually Garchomp can survive that and deal big damage to it in return. So how can Sam deal with the Garchomp? If I'm looking at these player sheets, I think Martin's Garchomp can certainly be one of the keys to victory if he does decide to take this set.
Sam has both the Gyarados and the Celesteela. Both of them can block out if Groundium Z, the most popular item on Garchomp, they can cause him to completely waste that. Specifically, Sam also has the ability to, if he gets just a bit of chip damage, that Nihilego can come in and get a quick KO on Garchomp using something like Hidden Power. So I definitely don't think it's the most difficult thing for Sam to do, so long as he plays it smart and doesn't let that Garchomp run too wild. Garchomp is a big threat to his Marowak and Tapu Koko, and without those, he might be Sam might be stuck facing down Martin's own Celesteela, which can wall him out at that point.
Well, I want to ask you a very general question, because I got to ask Sam this yesterday since we did the last match together. I know that it's a big deal to you that Pokemon had came back to Canada, and I'm extremely happy that we have a Canada versus Canada match in the top 8.
For sure.
How do you think that it played out, man? Did it meet your expectations, and what was it like to see all your friends come together and have a hometown event?
I am so excited that everyone decided to come here to Toronto. I want to thank every single player who showed up from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you guys, yeah.
I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in, for sure.
Yeah, thank you guys.
One thing I do want to touch on is, unfortunately, the Northeast doesn't have the most amount of regional championships, which is very disappointing. I feel like the Northeast would like more. Unfortunately, there's no Boston or Massachusetts regional this time around. So, as much as I love saying you guys should come to Toronto, and I really want you to because I love meeting you guys, I love the VGC community, but it's very difficult because at the same time I don't want to have to remove a regional from another area like Boston or like Virginia. Here in Toronto, we have it a little bit difficult. Our nearest regional outside of this one, before this, was 9 hours to Fort Wayne by driving. So it's been tough, and I'm so glad that we're having this. I just wish we could have so many more regionals, and everyone could attend every single one, and I could get to meet and hang out with everyone, because I love all the Pokemon players. Well, they're so great.
As far as I'm aware, this had exceeded the expectations of what people had thought who were going to come, especially on the TCG side and the VGC side. So if you can keep on getting the amount of participants like this, then I don't think there is any reason why they wouldn't come back and maybe even add a few more in Northeast. As long as we do our job, get people excited about the game, anyone can get into this thing. Yes, people like Sam and Martin are top players, and they've been playing for a long time. But even if you're just picking up Pokemon for the first time, all it takes is that practice and playtesting like we were talking about. And truly, the only thing that separates anyone is what's in here. So keep trying to become a better trainer.
For sure.
Is there anything that you would like to talk about Sam and Martin before we, quickly get into this match shortly?
I think we're good. I think we should we're gonna cut out and head over to them once they're ready. I think they're just getting set up right now.
Sounds good to me. Well,
we'll throw it back to you guys in just a second.
Be right back, guys.